How's it going, everybody? I'm Enoch Lothaver, and this is What's Next PDX, and who's next? Right here, Josh
How's it
Vallejos,
going, guys?
aka Wolfkin. So let's just dive right into it. Want to get into, give the viewers a little background into yourself, maybe what got you into music, how long have you been producing, and when did you first really get the bug?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Utah. My dad was a musician growing up. He played music most of his life. He wanted to be like a touring musician and things like that, but then he ended up having kids and things in a real life. So
What kind of instruments
he
is he
played
playing?
guitar, he played drums, he kind of did all that
Okay.
stuff. So yeah, he was on a bunch of like punk bands when he was growing up. So he actually bought me my first drum set when I was like 10 years old, and I would just come home every day after
Great.
school and just taught myself how to play drums. So that was my first like really foray into like making music when I was just like a little kid. As time went on, high school, I started meeting other musicians and things like that in my neighborhood, and we actually, with some guys that I had grown up with, started playing in a band. So that was my first like foray into actually like going to venues and playing live shows and things like that. Was being in a band. So I played drums for all those years in these punk and ska bands back in Utah, which was pretty fun. So. Yeah, that was my first foray into music, and I guess the kind of thing that got me into the more production side. I mostly make electronic music now. Was we actually went into a studio to record our first EP, and I saw the audio engineer doing all this crazy stuff with all his software and his studio and things like that, and that was what kind of made me want to dive into the audio engineering side. So a couple years later, I got the money together to go to school for audio engineering, and yeah, that's what was my first foray into production. And that was probably 6 years ago now. It's been since I graduated from that school. And yeah, I've been doing production ever since. So
Cool. So you actually have a degree in music production.
Yeah, professional degree.
You're not just
a bachelor's degree in audio engineering. So yeah, that was definitely
Great.
the basis of all the knowledge and stuff that I have was going to school. So yeah.
And now you say you're more like into, would you say electronic music now?
Yeah.
or-
It's mostly like it's definitely not a band thing anymore. It's just me.
Right.
I have a studio. I use Ableton Live mostly, and I make a ton of different stuff lately. That's been kind of one of the biggest hurdles in making music lately. Is I just like so much different music. It's kind of hard to like focus in and really
Right.
really zone in on a sound and what you want to make. So yeah, it's a good thing though.
And how long have you been into Ableton Live? What was your first iteration of Live?
So
that you were
actually,
introduced to?
before I went to school, I had like this shit Windows laptop that I was using, and I had an early
We all
copy
did.
of Ableton 7 on it, and it was like I would try to produce in it, and it would be like this computer would be so crappy that I wouldn't be able to do more than like 5 tracks at a time. And I actually ended up like overheating this PC so much just with this early version of Ableton that it just fried on me. So that was my first time using Ableton Live, and I was like. Back then, I was like, I'm never going to use this program again. It just broke my like $500 laptop. So that was my first iteration. And then after college, they give you like a laptop as part of your tuition and things.
There you go.
And that was my first foray into Logic Pro. So I started using Logic Pro as my first thought when I very first started making music.
You have a lot of friends who are really into
Yeah, I
Logic.
do too, actually, and it's not bad by any means. It's definitely a little bit more complicated in my mind to do really simple things, and so that's kind of what, like was my frustration as I was making music. Is it never really felt creative for me. But as Ableton grew and it changed from version 8 to version 9 is when I started using it. It definitely got a lot better than some of those earlier versions that I was using.
Yeah,
so.
my first was 8, so I kind of jumped in.
I started off
later,
at like 6 or 7. I
which
think is
was
the first one I used.
They had a lot more going on with 8.
Yeah, definitely.
than back
8
then,
is when
and
I first got into it.
It definitely seemed a
felt
lot more
better.
intuitive.
Yeah, totally. It was more creative. It was definitely a lot more streamlined, simple to do, to do things. Whereas Logic, it took me like 20 minutes to do something that like Ableton, it took 5 minutes.
I always felt like Logic was a little bit more towards like either mastering or towards like live recording.
Definitely. That's
whereas Ableton Live, I feel like it's more like for live production, live playing.
Yeah, in college or whatever, they focused on it as a more of like a mixing software, so
Right.
you can mix tracks down and things like that, or like you said, do mastering and things like that, or live recordings. But yeah, Ableton definitely seems more of a tool for creating, using MIDI, creating tracks and things like that.
Yeah,
more of a tool.
sequencing is one of the greatest things.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays you can do all of that stuff with any of these
Yeah,
programs. You can do it with an iPod.
Ableton definitely has its own thing going on. I feel like there's not really much that compares to it, in my opinion, with what they have going on these days. So
I definitely looked around a lot, and Ableton kind of caught my eye. Like it's not the sexiest, I've always said.
Yeah,
but like
the GUI's
it's
a little
like
cartoony.
the Photoshop of music.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
it's there's so many different ways to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's a very powerful tool.
And in my mind, it doesn't matter really what you use as long as you get the job done.
That's
There's
also
plenty of people
true.
that make great music using whatever they want. So I know kids that make incredible tunes using FL Studio or Sony Acid
People
Pro or Reaper
swear
or stuff
by
like
Fruity
that.
Loops
So,
still. They're like die hard.
Yeah, so like in my
nothing wrong
mind,
with that.
it doesn't matter whatsoever. But yeah, definitely Ableton.
Which
has
is
been mine.
personally, that was one of my favorites. I started with Fruity Loops like in way before I ever messed around with Ableton or anything else.
I think a lot of people did.
That's the other. I think a lot of people.
I didn't ever get into the Fruity Loops. I think I messed with Reason a bunch back in the day when it first came out. Reason, yeah,
they're kind of similar.
Which pretty crazy program. It was like this rack-based software.
That's weird. The rack-based.
Yeah.
I never got into.
It was hard to make music.
Swears by it,
but
though.
again, there's people that make really good songs in it.
My friend swears that the arpeggio in Ableton sucks. So he uses the Reason one.
He exclusively uses.
He'll
Reason
rewire his Ableton through. It's
yeah.
ridiculous. But if you know what you're doing and you put up scales on your arpeggio and a bunch of other stuff, you can get some really cool effects. But it is a lot more technical. It's not as easy.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
But do you have any favorite VSTs that you like to use when you're producing? Make sounds with? Or?
I definitely over the years have made it a habit of like just collecting software. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of a problem. I just have this hard drive of just so many different plugins, and it's, in that aspect, it can be kind of damaging sometimes because you have so much choice out there. You don't really, you can overwhelm yourself. So some advice that I would give, like, definitely don't overwhelm yourself with different plugins and things like that. It's definitely. There's a lot of people that continue to make great music with just the simple plugins. I know people that just use Massive and just the built-in stock Ableton stuff.
I mean, people still using just the 808.
Yeah.
Is like what, 40 years old or something that by now. Like, you can't get away from it.
No,
it's
definitely not.
Classic sounds.
That's actually what I have a bunch of samples. When I actually went to school, some people there had some of these vintage drum machines, and they for a project they went in and sampled all these 808s and 909s. Right. And I actually turned around and built drum racks out of them into Ableton.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I still use stuff like that from 5 years ago in school and in music now.
Well, talking about that, do you ever share any of this stuff with people?
I actually am going to start building sample packs. I think in the coming year. So I actually want to start putting some stuff together and hopefully do like a monthly thing where I put a sample pack out every month.
Well, that'd be great. So, we'd love to be a part of that if possible.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So as far as like other VSTs that have like really like caught my attention right now, there's this guy Steve Duda. He owns a company called X4 Records, and he makes some pretty incredible software. Mm-hmm. So he just released this synth a couple months ago called Serum. And as far as like soft synths go, that's kind of like the end all be all for me right now.
Okay, well, like what kind of, is it like an additive?
It's a subtractive, I believe. But the cool thing about that is it can do more than just one type of synthesis. So it's like a wavetable synthesizer, so you can actually load different like wavetables in it, and you can do anything from FM, subtractive, additive. Okay. I think you could do granular if you wanted to with certain waveforms.
So it really is.
So yeah, it's kind of like the end all, like be all, of synthesis right now, in my opinion. So that's definitely what I've been making most of my leads and stuff, like my basses and stuff with. Also, there's this little synthesizer called Chromophone. It's made by a company called Applied Acoustic Systems, I think. And it's a collision synthesizer, so it actually models
I've heard about
hits
those.
of certain like metal, like bells, wood, strings, all these really cool things, and acoustic modeling, I think, is what it is. So I've been using that a lot for a lot of like arpeggiators and leads and things like that as well. And then I got to be honest, man, the stock stuff in Ableton is fantastic.
Yeah,
so a lot of people overlook it. Yeah, they definitely overlook it, and there's so much good stuff in there if you're willing to like dig around and mess around with stuff. The chorus in Ableton, I've gotten some sounds out of that, out of plugins that cost me $200 that just comes free with Ableton. It sounds way better. So yeah, it's definitely, like you said, it's definitely better to like sit down with things and try to maybe master those before branching out and moving into other things.
Yeah,
spending a bunch
people
of
try to
money.
complicate things too
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
It's like if you can make something very simple sound good,
Complicated
then
is definitely
you
not
can
better.
move on to the next thing. But most people, they don't get that simple thing to sound good. They get overwhelmed. They get all these VSTs. They get all these different programs, and they don't know what to do.
They miss
with
the
them.
point. They miss the point that they should be making music instead.
Right? Anything if you have a good song, you could play it on a little recorder and it would sound good.
There's musicians out there that sample all sorts of weird stuff and turn it into amazing music. So yeah, it's definitely VSTs don't make the musician by any means. It's
nowadays
what you
it
choose
seems
to
like
do with
samplers are
them.
kind of taking over
A little bit, yeah.
with it sort of seemed like it was kind of getting big with trap, and now a lot of other genres are kind of adapting the sampled synth as like a main instrument in songs.
I actually, a fun thing that I like to do actually is I have a little field recorder. So I spent like $200 on this little field recorder, and I'll actually, if I'm ever out and about or something like that on my days off, if I'm like hiking or at a store or something like that, I've actually gone into the synth shop here in Portland a few times and taken this little field recorder and sampled some of the noises from the other synths there, and then turned around and made them samples for tracks and things like that. So yeah, it's like the sky's the limit with this stuff, man. With all this technology, you can go and buy one of those field recorders for $50 and build your own kits.
And people don't realize sampler. I mean, in Ableton and in any program, really, like sampling is really gone a long way since the 80s.
Music it wouldn't be around right now without all the sampling, and it's pretty controversial actually. You see, everyone and their dog is doing remixes or posting songs with like uncleared samples, but I kind of think that, in my opinion, really like diminishes like what people can do with music when stuff like that happen, when like copyright law comes in.
And I mean, what's the rule? Like, does somebody own a certain wave form, or do they own a certain frequency? Can you not even like mimic it?
It's pretty.
It becomes a very gray area.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
And it stifles creativity.
People get around it though. I'll hear songs sometimes, and I'll hear things or whatever of samples that I've heard in the past, and people find ways to get away with it, and they make original songs out of these things, which is totally cool in my opinion. I understand people's want to.
Technically, for a lot of stuff, as long as you're not making money off it.
Most of these people
if it's just something you release, for free on people
just to
share.
Yeah, I'm sure they're making money off touring and stuff like that, but that's they're singing them for their other original music or whatever. So I think it's totally fine in my opinion to do things like that. Some people might not agree, but I think sampling is essential to like what music is right now. So,
well, since we're talking about sampling and different music and stuff, is there any artist that you can think of right now that's like up and coming, or maybe someone that's been overlooked for a while who's got you excited?
Not necessarily like overlooked. I was actually just browsing through tracks today on SoundCloud, and there's this kid I've seen kind of pop up. This Sean Wasabi kid. You ever heard of him before? Sean Wasabi. He had this custom MIDI controller built for him by the guys over at DJ Tech Tools.
Okay.
It's this custom that uses these arcade buttons. It's like one of those little MIDI fighters, but it's got 64 pads.
Okay, I know who you're talking about now.
He literally has these giant sample packs that he uses of all these just little car sounds.
He does live finger drumming of he does full songs essentially.
And he posted this new track today of him doing this live song, and it was incredible how much work he put into this thing.
Yeah.
He's doing I think when he records these or whatever, he does it all live of him just playing off his
plus, if
controller.
I'm not mistaken, he has sort of kind of built-in lighting effects that kind of go off while he's
that's
doing
a whole other
it.
thing too. That's not even just music. I feel like he's going into Max for Live. I don't know if you've never heard of Max for Live. It's this programming language for Ableton, and you can.
Which is another reason why Ableton is great. Is if you're smart and you're a programmer, the sky's the limit.
You can build your own synths from the ground up. Yeah, definitely the ground up.
You can't do that in Tractor. No. You can't do that in
Logic or anything like that. Yeah, none of those other DAWs. But another, actually, that kind of brings me to another synth that I really like. Native Instruments just updated Reactor 6, I think it is. And you can actually, I wanted to buy modular synthesizers for a really long time, but the cost of those things is pretty exorbitant. I have friends that spend thousands of dollars a month on these things
on a module.
They're really, and it's I understand the appeal because
it's cool. It's cool.
The possibilities are endless.
And the sounds you can get out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can afford to have a room I almost said Modest Mouse, Dead Mouse.
Just a wall of synthesizers, stuff that you probably feel like he never touches.
Then go for it. But if just for us regular people, it's not really something we can realistically get into too much.
This Reactor made it really like affordable to be able to just sit and build your own modular synthesizers from the ground up. So it's definitely something that I've been messing around with, trying to build my own synths to get maybe more unique sounds than the synths that everybody else is using.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely opened up the world a little bit, and hopefully in the future I'd like to sit down more and learn more Max for Live stuff. But it definitely goes pretty down the rabbit hole as far as like programming and things like that. So it's definitely a little bit overwhelming sometimes. But yeah,
it can be. I think that turns a lot of people off from it. Like it's a little too much. Like if you just open it up, it's like, well, what do I do? There's nothing here.
Yeah, I agree.
You kind of gotta dive in before you can really start doing anything great. Speaking about Ableton and projects and stuff, you have any projects that you're working on in Ableton that you want to discuss at all,
totally. So this a couple months ago I just released an EP on a local label here in Portland called Beat Rocks Records. It was a little 3-track EP. It was a little bit more experimental. I've been trying, like I said, one of my biggest hurdles right now with making music is being like a little overwhelmed by all the genres that are out right now, because you literally can go on SoundCloud and listen for an hour and you'll hear 10 different types of music. So
and a lot of them are great.
Yeah, and
it's hard to know.
Yeah, it's hard to zero in on a sound that I really want to make. So I'll sit and start making a track or something like that, and I'll change tempos, change genres, change drum patterns and things like that, trying to figure out what it might sound best as. So I guess in that aspect, that EP was a little bit experimental. It gave me a chance to try out like a bunch of different genres in one, where it wasn't really the same thing throughout the EP. So that was really cool to be able to do that. And I think I'm going to do that more for each of my more releases. I don't really want to box myself in or pigeonhole myself or anything like that into making one thing. And I feel like a lot of producers nowadays are doing stuff like that. They don't necessarily, like some guys maybe have their sound or something that they've been doing for a while, but they still branch out. A guy that really brought that into mind was a guy, Getter. If you've ever heard of Getter, he's he's really known for like dubstep and stuff like that. He makes these really heavy dubstep tunes. But then a couple months ago, he released this Planet Neutral EP, where it was just a bunch of like really chilled out like future bass music, and it was really unexpected.
I'm really into that right now. Yeah, like the chill wave, kind of low.
It was different. It was really interesting, inspiring, I should say, to see a guy that is known for making heavy dubstep trying to branch out to not pigeonhole himself to these other things. So.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, part of the problem with some of the dubstep and some of the EDM of that nature is it sort of feels like you have to be on drugs to really appreciate it.
I can see how it'd be a little bit busy sometimes. So yeah, it's good to see people being
you can't always be on drugs all the time, so you got to have some music that's a little chiller, that is for other parts of the
these different genres all have their place, and I know people. I don't drink or anything anymore, so I can see even me going out to the club. I still enjoy dubstep and heavy music and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a substance thing or anything like that. It's just there's a time and a place, I suppose, for everything, and it's good to have variety. A lot of people have variety in their lives, and I think it's better that way. So yeah. As far as the projects I'm working on right now, I have 4 new songs that I'm going to do. I don't think I'm going to release them as an EP this time. I think I'm going to spread them out a little bit more. So probably starting at the beginning of the year, I think I'm going to do a track maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks or something like that.
There you go.
And do a little release, and then I'm going to try and maybe do a sample pack along with each track. So just a 16 grid sample pack for people to use for their drums or something like that, or for their samplers or whatever. So that's my goal in the next starting at the beginning of the year. So yeah. And I think inside those projects, there's going to be there's one. I was up in Seattle this year working at a festival called Decibel Festival, and there are all these guys. I get to run some showcases at Q Nightclub up there, which is this big giant nightclub with the Function One system. And all the guys I got to manage for this showcase or whatever, all these techno guys from Berlin. Where the music scene there is crazy. They have clubs that go till 8 a.m. all night long, just playing this
hard.
Just huge warehouse techno with these giant kick drums, and it was really inspiring to see what they were doing working with these guys. And so that kind of inspired me to mess around with that genre a little bit more. So I have a techno track in there. I have some future bass music in there, some more trap stuff.
Awesome.
And then I'm gonna try and mess with some bass house and stuff like that for these upcoming songs.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's a good variety, and it'll be maybe appeal to everybody. So I've definitely been into more the industrial sound, I guess. There's guys like Alessia, Gesaffelstein. There's this girl named Rez from Canada that just barely got her start. That she makes this mid-tempo stuff that is just insane. And she's actually starting to tour with like Destructo only after a year of making music.
And do you know,
So-
do these artists perform mostly on like CDJs?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
or are
I think
they-
most of them, a lot. I've seen Destructo play before, and I think he's definitely like using like CDJs and things like that. But this new girl Rez, she definitely uses Tractor, I think is what she's doing, but she's making the transition to over to CDJs. I feel like it's a lot more common to see people using Tractor. You know, like for me
Yeah.
DJing, I grew up like my first experience DJing was using a really early version of Tractor, and when I was in college, I couldn't really afford CDJs or anything like that.
not.
They're so
Who could?
expensive. Because I was like paying for school, and so I had this little 16 grid MIDI pad controller, this little nano core key thing with a bunch of faders and sliders and stuff on it, and that was my first foray into learning how to MIDI map, and I actually built my whole DJ setup was MIDI mapped around early version
That's
of
awesome.
Tractor, and so I would show up to venues in Arizona where my school was at when I first started DJing. And it'd show up with this like setup with this audio interface, this tiny little MacBook Pro, this little 16 grid MIDI controller, and this little slider thing, and all these other DJs that would play on vinyl with like Serato and timecode would just like laugh at me.
They think you were
And
a joke.
It was they just didn't because it was like still kind of like new, like to see people.
No,
doing
even today there's
controllerism
still
and stuff
kind
like
of
that.
a bitter rivalry.
Yeah, there definitely is.
At
And
least perceived between
Yeah.
the two different DJing types.
It's different, and I don't know why that's such a thing. And I can maybe see a little bit why. I guess people want more authenticity. They want people to work a little bit harder, because it's definitely, you know, anyone can go out and buy a controller and I guess DJ, maybe not well, but they can. And I think that's maybe why people are a little more
But
frustrated.
I think that in a sense is, I mean, anybody can DJ.
Yeah, it's
so
that's a good
like,
thing.
why should we be mad about it?
No,
Like, why should
I'm definitely
you,
not mad about it.
You
Yeah.
know, be like, oh no, like I've struggled to DJ. Like
Yeah.
these people haven't heard. Like Paris Hilton's a DJ. Just deal with it. It's fine.
She's not affecting you in any way. I don't know why people bitch so much about it. But yeah, I've seen, you know, over my years, I've played on MIDI controllers, I played on timecode vinyl, I've played on CDJs,
And
played
today
on controllers,
it's more and more common to
Yeah.
see
I still
MIDI
currently-
controllers in the club.
Yeah, I still currently use my laptop with Tractor and plug my it's called HID mode, where I can
Yeah.
control Tractor with the CDJs.
And even people using CDJs will tend to have a little MIDI controller just off to the side a lot of the time.
I have a little Native Instruments X1 that I'll bring sometimes if I feel like it, and I'll use it for like looping and effects.
There's
and
nothing
things
wrong
like
with that. It's not
No.
cheating. It's not
in any way. Yeah, I can, like I said, I can see why people may be frustrated. They just want more. They want more artistic.
Here's the
expression,
thing:
maybe,
if you're
so.
straight up scratch vinyl battle DJ,
Yeah.
then fine, be mad about it.
yeah.
But you know that you're way cooler than this guy who's on his controller anyway. So
Yeah.
what's the deal? Like you're
Yeah.
over here like doing this
Beat
crazy
juggling
stuff.
and, do all this crazy.
Like,
yeah.
why you gotta be mad that this other guy's over here, you know, with the sync on?
Everyone's always worried about, I don't know, is it maybe an ego thing or something like that. They feel like they had to work harder or something like that, and now this person's maybe, I don't know,
No.
making money or something like that. Yeah, it definitely doesn't really make sense to me, that aspect of it.
I think there's room for everyone.
There is room for everyone. Yeah, everyone should be able to have the chance to make music, and you know, I definitely wouldn't be where I am without having the chance to make music and
Yeah.
you know, taking the risks that I did. With,
we need to
what I
stand
did,
up to bullies.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. No more DJ
No,
bullies.
no DJ bowling,
DJ
guys.
bullies.
Come on. All right. So you've explained to us some of your inspirations and people that you've been looking into recently. Let's dive into some of the stuff you've been doing yourself on the production side.
Yeah, man.
You have a template here you want to show us and kind of give us an overview of your workflow?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk a little bit about workflow today. I feel like it's one of the more important aspects in music production. So I'm going to focus around that and how to build a template for yourself a little bit, and help give people some inspiration for maybe a template they want to build in the future. So
Great.
Yeah.